It's been basically non-stop over the past few weeks. A new Switch model is going to be announced, but many endlessly long days have passed us by, yet we still have not seen any official announcement for a Switch Pro. Despite this, we have still been seeing a new quote-unquote leak almost every hour where someone reveals some tiny new little detail that may or may not be true. So let's take a look at those rumors, where they started, and go over why Nintendo has not announced the Switch Pro yet, assuming it is real, and for fun, I'll go over what I personally would like to see from it as well. And of course, there's the distinct possibility that it will be announced 5 minutes after I upload this video, so let's get into it. But before we do get started, I want to thank everyone so much for helping me reach 100 subscribers, and I'll be doing some channel housekeeping at the end of the video. Seriously, you guys are amazing. However, if you are not subscribed yet and enjoy the video, please do consider subscribing. Alright, so let's go back to where everything started, a Bloomberg article from 2 weeks ago. Now, Bloomberg isn't typically a publication that throws around baseless rumors, and they actually do have a track record of being correct when it comes to the Switch. Last year, before the Switch Lite and standard Switch remodel came out, Bloomberg did correctly report on it before it came out, although it does seem like they didn't have all the specifics when it came to those models. So when it comes to the leak from 2 weeks ago, it does seem like there is a good possibility that there is an actual Switch Pro model being worked on. However, there are some reasons that I'll go over later that could be affecting the announcement date. In that article, Bloomberg stated that the new console will be more expensive than the current $300 price point. It will have a 7-inch Samsung OLED display, along with a better NVIDIA graphics card capable of 4K output when docked to a TV. Bloomberg also said that suppliers aren't confident that they can fulfill Nintendo's orders despite the ongoing semiconductor shortage, and that the parts Nintendo are using have less competition, unlike Sony and Microsoft essentially competing over the same CPU and GPU. So there's a few things to unpack from that statement that I feel that are being overlooked, and that we can move on to some of the newer rumors coming out. First off, the price point being higher than the $300 is practically a given. The original Switch was already using some dated hardware when it launched, making it easier to get the cost of the console down. That being said, if they do want to compete with Sony and Microsoft, they are going to have to use cutting-edge technology, not to mention the cost of graphics cards have skyrocketed since the Switch's release. So it makes complete sense that the price will go up, and personally I think it will be in the $400 range, if not higher. Next, the larger display of course makes sense, and it's something I'm personally looking forward to. Early rumors said it will still be 720p, which is still a little perplexing to me. 1080p is already being phased out right now. If they were actually using a 720p screen, it must be an absolutely required cost-saving maneuver. I really hope it's actually 1080p, but another rumor we'll go over later might have some reasoning for why they went with a 720p screen, although I'm still somewhat skeptical on that rumor. Next, the improved graphics is a given, but I do want to focus on the line that says capable of 4K output. See, the PS5 and Xbox Series X are capable of 8K output, but it's unlikely you'll ever see any game at that resolution, and if you do, it will be a 2D game that a potato PC can run at 8K. When they say capable of 4K output, that leads me to believe that the 4K will be more for streaming apps than for actual games. Although, of course, there's always a possibility that very old games being ported over could run at 4K. I just wouldn't expect 4K to be the norm for brand new games. While the Bloomberg article is somewhat vague in areas, everything they did say seems perfectly reasonable for a Switch Pro, assuming it's actually real. At this point, it's either the worst kept secret on the internet, or we are all collectively going through a worldwide mass hallucination. Although, I do actually have some ideas as to why they haven't announced it yet, but let's first quickly go over some of the more recent rumors. So of course, Eurogamer did corroborate the Bloomberg article, which does give it more credence. Again, Eurogamer is generally not the type of site to just make up news. However, after that article, it's much more difficult to say what's potentially real or not. The problem now is that the Switch Pro has become the biggest news story in gaming, and everyone is extremely excited to see it announced. So with that excitement, there's always people craving attention that will make up perfectly reasonable sounding rumors to get attention they so desperately crave. And then on the other hand, we have people actually calling manufacturers to get more details, and listings on various websites that quickly get taken down. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is, just take these rumors with a Snorlax-sized grain of salt. The other big rumor making the rounds now comes from a recent Errorformer post and says the GPU will be capable of putting out 120 FPS at 720p in handheld mode, but Nintendo will lock the performance at just 60 FPS. It also says the dock performance will target 1440p, a 1GHz GPU, and while DLSS technology will be implemented in the Switch Pro, it will only be usable in docked mode and will be locked out at launch. There's a few things that don't sit right with me in this rumor, however, some of it is just basic logic. There's also other leaks from website listings saying that it will cost $350, and assuming that is true, then the Switch Pro targeting 1440p seems about right. The Xbox Series X is $300 and targets 1440p, so if the Switch Pro costs a little bit more, that makes sense. Granted, the Switch will be based off mobile hardware, which is typically weaker than a full console or PC, but then again, it is newer technology than the PlayStation and Xboxes, so 1440p again makes sense. Also, given how few games actually support DLSS at the current moment, I could see it not being in any games at launch, but it being locked out at first just doesn't make sense. It's not like we can go in and change the settings ourselves, so it would have to be the developers making updates to their games to implement it. Also, the 120 FPS in handheld mode seems too good to be true, and along with no mention of the dock mode going to 120 FPS, that part of the rumor makes no sense. There's zero reason why they would implement 120 FPS screens into the Switch Pro if they didn't plan on using it. That would increase cost, which from a business standpoint is pointless. And Nintendo is usually a bit behind when it comes to gaming trends, so I'd be shocked if they added in 120 FPS. That being said, I hope it's true, as 120 FPS in handheld or dock mode would be incredible. This really does seem like a rumor that was created from pure logic, and it covers any bases, because if DLSS or 120 FPS are not to be found, then the leaker can say it's because they aren't implemented, or if they are present, then the leaker can say Nintendo changed their minds. Okay, with all those rumors out of the way, let's go over what I think is going on, and assuming any of them are right, I'll go over some thoughts I have on them. Starting off, if the 1GHz GPU rumor is correct and DLSS is enabled, that would roughly put the Switch Pro GPU on par with a RTX 2060 Max-Q, which would make sense given the price point. Of course, it will be a custom GPU, but that's the only thing I could find somewhat close to those specifications. If that is the case, then we are looking at 1440p 30 or 1080p 60, and most graphics settings will be on low or medium, depending on the game of course, but DLSS could help out in some situations. I think that's a fairly reasonable assumption for performance, and I doubt they'll use an outdated GPU like they did with the original Switch. I'm not sure about the $350 price point. I think it will be $400, but that's pure speculation. Until they officially announce it, I mean, who knows? What I would personally like to see is a focus on having 60 FPS be the baseline, whether that be at a native 1080p or 1440p using DLSS. 120 FPS would be great, but I just don't see Nintendo implementing that. The screen I would love to see at 1080p, but like I said earlier, 720p is certainly possible for cost saving to get the console at a targeted price point. While I'm sure the basic shape will be the same because I highly doubt they will make new Joy-Cons, it would be so nice to see them make the new model ergonomically sound. The current Switch hurts my hands when I use it in handheld mode, and I have to use a third-party accessory to make it usable. Also, I want to see older games get boosted to 60 FPS, as I still want to play my older Switch games. Not being able to get a higher frame rate with older games would almost make the purchase pointless until they came out with a decent library of newer games that do take advantage of the new hardware. So as far as what I think is going on with all these rumors, there's a few possibilities. First, I know it's not what people want to hear, but the pandemic is still affecting everything, and it's possible they did intend to announce it last week, but simply it got delayed due to issues related to that. I personally don't think that's the case, but again, it is a possibility. Another thing that could be going on is that Nintendo is seeing the insane amount of hype over the new console building up to a breaking point, and they simply want to dominate the pre-E3 headlines. It would be a sound marketing strategy, although it's not a great look towards your fans if that is the case. The third possibility is that they have seen the extremely negative feedback towards Sony and Microsoft since no one can buy their consoles, and Nintendo decided to push the Switch Pro release till next year when they can make enough consoles to meet demand. I know the Bloomberg article said the manufacturers said they can keep up with demand, but I don't see how that's humanly possible right now. Given Nvidia can't even manufacture enough of its own discrete GPUs to meet demand, I don't see how they could also make GPUs for the Switch Pro on top of that. Granted, the GPU will be much smaller and they can make more of them per wafer, but I don't see that making a meaningful difference. And lastly, it's possible the rumor just isn't true and a lot of people just want to get attention and have fed the hype mill. Everyone wants a more powerful Switch, and Nintendo would be insane not to make one, but it's Nintendo, they march to the beat of their own drum. I do think it's a real thing, but I'm just exploring every possibility. Regardless if it's true, and I really hate to say this, don't expect to be able to buy one. Looking at how horrible it's been for people to get PS5s, Xboxes, and new GPUs over the past 8 months, just imagine how impossible it will be to get a Switch Pro. Even assuming they had 10 million ready at launch, which they won't, it will be 3 to 5 million tops, they will sell out immediately. Then they will get put up on eBay for $3,000, and no one will be able to enjoy any of the new games that come out for it. Imagine how bad the press would be for Nintendo if they released Breath of the Wild 2 with Switch Pro enhancements, but no one is actually able to get their hands on a Switch Pro because bots buy them all up immediately. The negative press would be overwhelming. Maybe even worse than we've seen for Nvidia, AMD, Sony, and Microsoft, since everyone is sick and tired of having everything being sold out constantly. If one does come out this October or September, I know I'll be pissed off if I'm unable to get one at launch, then have to constantly check restock alerts to try and find one. I'm already doing that with the Xbox Series X right now, and I'm beyond sick of it always being out of stock, and I know a lot of people feel the same way. But anyways, let me know down in the comments, if you could design the Switch Pro, what features would you want to put in it? If you did enjoy the video, make sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks again so much for the 100 subs, and now it's on to 1,000. Just a few housekeeping things before I go. I've gotten a lot of messages about Discord, Instagram, and other social media stuff. I do have a Twitter at ZSlayerDre, you can follow me there. I'm not huge on social media, but I am making a point to post more. When it comes to Discord, I will be making one, but I was planning on getting it going once I had a few hundred subs, so once I'm ready to get it going, I'll probably do a channel update video for that. Similarly, once I hit a higher sub count, I'll also get a subreddit and Instagram going as well. I'm also working on a Mass Effect 3 Platinum review, but since I'll be covering all of the E3 news, it will probably be a few weeks before that comes out. Thanks so much for watching, I'll see you all in the next video.